everybody, and welcome back. This is Susan Houtz, the Marketing Coordinator for Aging Matters in Brevard, the lead agency for senior services here in our beautiful Brevard County, Florida. As many of you may know, Aging Matters in Brevard is the government agency that's set up to provide services for our seniors in our community so they can live at home safely and actively and independently for as long as possible, because that's really where they want to be. So to do that, we are set up to provide nutrition services through Meals on Wheels. We provide home care, housing safety improvements with ramps and grab bars and other things. We have transportation programs, an RSVP retired and senior volunteer program, and bone builders classes, and a lot of other stuff. One of our most important services is to provide caregivers in our community, and in those, specifically those in-home caregivers that are taking care of their spouse or their loved ones or their parents, so that they can feel supported, so that they can take better care of their loved one, which is the whole goal. So to do that, we've been pairing up with wonderful community partners to bring you that information. And today we are here with Jital from Coastal Occupational Therapy, who's going to talk to us about a very specific topic that many of us might not have thought of. It's for caregivers that who are working with their loved ones that have suffered from post-stroke depression. So Jital, we're very excited about this information. Thank you for being here with us, and take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Susan. Thank you for having me. So yes, what we're going to do is just quickly kind of, I want to start off with just small analysis on just stroke. So we know one of the first symptoms that we think of when you think of a stroke is paralysis, but one of the main ones that gets really under noticed is depression. So we know that depression is actually quite common after a stroke. Not many people realize that. So 1 in 3 people experience depression at some point during the 5 years after their stroke, and that's based on research. It's known that within the first 5 years after a stroke, that chances are that person in one form or another will have depression. And it's just not a psychological response. Research also suggests that there's biological factors that can contribute to the mood changes as well. Okay. So some of the contributing factors that we want to take note as to what causes the depression is the location of the lesion. So we know that the location of where the stroke happens affects different parts of your body. So left-sided stroke affects your right side, and right-sided stroke affects your left side. It's also known that left frontal lobe lesion, or the stroke at your left frontal lobe, is significantly higher risk of someone having depression. Also, a previous or family history of depression. So it's known that 20% of the people that have post-stroke depression, they've had a prior history. Bereavement. So those over the age of 70 who recently lost a spouse are 9 times more at risk of getting depression, only because now the lifestyle changes. They're on their own. They may or may not have family or friends that are nearby. So all of that kind of takes, play into depression. The other thing is major functional impairments, especially in stroke survivors who lose their ability to take care of their own needs. So physical changes include paralysis. So when they're not able to do the things that they were doing before, as simple as showering, getting dressed, in and out of a car, walking, that really plays a part in the overall depression symptoms and pain. So a lot of stroke survivors do get a lot of pain, in the sense, it could be a neurological nerve pain, and if it's not recognized and undertreated, that can play a big factor in someone that does have depression. So we'll just quickly go over 3 quick tips for caregivers with loved ones suffering from post-stroke depression. Okay. So the first one is, don't ignore the depression. Untreated depression can worsen quality of life and even hasten death. So when someone reports feelings of sadness, it allows them and their doctors to discuss treatment. So always open up that conversation. The symptoms of depression following a stroke are the same as from any other cause, right? So if someone has a depression post-stroke versus some other, debilitating issue, symptoms are almost always the same. They vary, but they're almost always the same. So if extreme sadness and hopelessness persists for longer than 2 weeks, or the person has no interest in socializing, they struggle to concentrate, as a caregiver, you should start to consider seeking help, because it doesn't appear at a set time. It can show up a few weeks or a few months, or even, they say, a year after the stroke has occurred. Okay, so definitely don't want to ignore the depression. Number two is recognize the symptoms. Okay, so you want to recognizing depression after a stroke can be difficult because some stroke symptoms can mimic depression. So, for example, after a stroke, some people experience reduced emotional expression. It's also known as flat affect, which can make them seem depressed. So problems with communication, such as difficulty understanding or trouble speaking, can limit the diagnosis and treatment of depression. So it's always important to recognize the difference between what's what. And symptoms include feeling down, loss of appetite, lack of interest in activities that used to bring them joy, or changes in sleeping pattern. Either they're sleeping too much or sleeping too little. So it's important to recognize and treat depression because it can influence how well you recover from stroke, physically and cognitively. Okay, and for all the caregivers that are caregivers for people that are recovering from stroke, they're not only dealing with challenges in mobility, you're also dealing with care and the communication, but their loved one's depression, it adds on an additional burden that can lead to the caregiver even developing depression of their own. Research says, according to the American Stroke Association, it reveals that 30 to 33% of caregivers were depressed at their loved ones, say 18-month post-stroke checkup appointments. So it's always good to keep in mind not only that you're taking care of your loved one, but you're also taking care of yourself. And just another study in 2011 in Journal of Neurology showed that successful treating of depression in both the caregiver and the loved one also helps a person recover from stroke a lot faster. Okay. So there's correlation between stroke and depression. It is real, and that depression can cause even greater impact in your quality of life, and more than physical and mental impairments themselves. Okay. And number three, learn ways to help manage depression. So educate yourself and educate others. It's always important to learn the symptoms of stroke. So, and share those with your friends, your family members, other caregivers. So the symptoms of stroke, there's an acronym for it called FAST. So you want to look for F for face drooping, A for arm weakness or numbness, S for speech problems, such as slurred speech or difficulty finding words, and T, time. Time is of essence. If you notice any of these symptoms in someone, you want to call 911 fast. Okay. And you want to stay socially engaged. Consider group activities such as exercises, support groups, book clubs as ways to interact with those you love and to meet new people who may also be going through the same issues you are. Seek out other stroke survivors. Talking to people going through a similar experience can help allay your fears. Look for support groups. You can go online and look at the American Heart Association. They've got great support. You have local communities. They have local support groups that you can also seek out. And many local hospitals, actually, they do have support groups that you can go. Maybe they're doing Zoom sessions these days, but that's all available. So you want to keep yourself knowledgeable. You want to recognize the symptoms of depression. You also want to recognize the symptoms of stroke, and educate as much as you can to your other family members, caregivers, and yourself, and just share the knowledge. And just to reiterate, you don't want to ignore the symptoms. You don't want to ignore the depression. Recognize the symptoms and then learn ways to help manage that depression. Effective communication is key. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, Jital, that is great information. Again, when we were talking about topics for this, we were thinking about, what specific topics that we might not think of in a general sense. And this was really educational. It was really helpful. It's like everything in Aging Matters. No one plans to need this information, right? No one plans to need nutrition brought to their door and things, but it's about preparation before crisis and knowing these and being aware of them if you do end up as a caregiver or around someone who has had a stroke, right? Very important to know and be able to recognize those things.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I said in the beginning, we all think about your physical impairments because that's one of the first things that you notice. And then we think about how to modify the house, how to make sure that the person's able to start, living back into their homes. But the depression is what's really I wouldn't say undertreated, but it's not easily recognized, you know, and then just internally they're suffering, physically they're suffering. So it's always, you know, caregivers, caregivers really need to recognize everything that's going on in mental, cognitive, physical sense.
Awesome. Well,
So
thank you so much. Yeah, that was
you're
incredibly
welcome.
helpful.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. It's so nice to have met you. We're going to also hope to see Jital later with Beth at a longer caregiver conversation where we talk a little bit more about these topics and things that we haven't thought about, and then great information ongoing. So we appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in today. Again, of course, if you are watching this on our YouTube channel, please go ahead and subscribe. If you're watching this on our Facebook, please hop over to our YouTube channel and subscribe. We're going to have ongoing videos of a range of topics for our caregivers here in our local community. So thanks again to Jital, and we will look forward to seeing everybody again soon. Until then, stay safe and healthy, and we'll talk to you soon here from Aging Matters in Brevard.